Well, all right. Welcome back to Generation Bridging the Gap with Rex.
And Eva.
And I am really excited today, Eva, because we are going to finish up your story, which is part 2.
Yes.
You
Getting to
excited?
talk about everything I remember now.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be fun. Actually, I got my coffee this morning, and I'm ready to listen to you talk a little bit more with your story. And anyway, it's going to be fun.
It is going to be a lot of fun. Okay.
And so last episode, just to catch our listeners up, we talked about adoption, the days leading up to your arrival at our house. We talked a little bit about some of your earliest memories, but I thought it might be helpful this week, basically, to just turn it over to you, and you can talk about some of the memories that you have, some of the challenges and struggles that teenagers have, because again, that's a big part of our podcast. Paul used to say this: when I came along, he realized that his world didn't exist anymore and that he was going to have to learn my world and the things that I was faced with. And I've told you that quite often.
Yeah.
I've repeated that to you.
Absolutely.
Hey, Eva, my world doesn't exist anymore. Yours does. I've got to learn about it. I'm still learning about it. Whatever the latest video game is, Stardew Valley. You say it so quick, it's like Stardew Valley.
Stardew Valley.
Yeah, Stardew Valley.
My favorite game. I've got like 600 hours on that game.
Yeah, that is currently your favorite game. So I've had to learn that kind of stuff. We didn't have video games. You know what the very first gaming system that came out was when I was in college?
Was it the Atari?
Yes, very good.
Yeah.
That is 80s trivia, but that's when Atari came out.
Yep.
And so fast forward, it blows my mind. And I went through this evolution, so to speak, in the military. When I went in the military in the 80s, all of the calculations for the weapon systems were done manually. You had to understand the geometry behind it. There was a ton of manual math. And then when I left 22 years later, we were pushing buttons because everything was GPS driven and it was automatically calculating the data that needed to be acquired. And so anyway, I've seen just all this stuff. So for me to see the games that you play, and actually I got to admit, they're pretty cool.
They are.
Yeah.
No, funny story about that. When we moved, we had found his old Monday Night Football board game.
Oh, yeah, we did, didn't we?
He used to play that with his dad, and it's essentially Madden before the Madden. And so when we were moving up here, there wasn't a lot to do, and it was football season. And so we were like, well, first we need to buy a TV, right? We're sleeping on air mattresses, but let's buy a TV to put in the living room so that we can watch football. And then he was like, we should get Madden. And I was like, my gaming console now doesn't support that. So we got an Xbox and we played Madden so much those first couple months until I figured out that I actually preferred Xbox over Nintendo. Don't hate me. But that's how I stay in contact with a lot of friends now. But it all started because he wanted to play Madden with me.
Yeah,
so.
And I love Madden. Again, it's another example. I was blown away at how good the graphics are on that game. And so you and I would literally play Madden for hours at a time. And when we say when we first moved, we're talking about moving from the last city we were in to here, from Montgomery to Birmingham. Yep. And so there wasn't any furniture in the house initially, and so we were looking for things to do.
Yeah, for sure. And it was so much fun, and it was fun to get to play it, and now I actually understand football after playing it. Did not know a thing about it. Now I knew. So you can't say video games brain rot when it taught me about football.
And I think it's cool that you actually enjoy pulling out the old Monday Night Football.
Yes,
we still have
fun.
it. We occasionally pull it out. And I'm sitting there thinking that this is so archaic. But I think that's part of the novelty for you. It's so different. It's retro. Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
This is so funny. And has absolutely well, it does.
Yeah,
because
a little bit.
It
is my current.
It's the things we've experienced together. And again, when we start having that conversation, my mind goes back to Battleship, as we've talked about.
Yep.
Paul played Battleship with me on the couch almost every night. And I just look back on that and I'm like, how grateful I am that he took the time every day to throw a baseball or football with me. And then we would go in, eat dinner. And then after dinner, most nights, Paul and I sat and played Battleship. And it was intentional time is the point of all that.
Absolutely.
And we're still trying to do that as a family. Let me say this before we get into, the teenage years. we didn't go. We left off the last episode just talking about adoption and how you came into the family and how it was absolutely amazing, the whole experience. But we didn't go. Your mom and I didn't go through the terrible twos. We thought we were the world's greatest parents, Eva's, because you were so incredible as a 2-year-old, and we were thinking, oh man, we are awesome. We've done everything right. This kid is amazing. And then 3 years old hit, and I'm sorry, but it was like an angel that was banished from heaven, and then all of a sudden there's this demon child, and we're like, what is happening?
There's a lot of stories about the 3-year-old age we have.
Yeah, and we could probably spend a whole episode on that, but you are, for those that have read books about raising children, those that have raised children, there are compliant, in general, there are compliant compliant children, and there are strong-willed children. And you, which one are you, Eva?
I'm still strong-willed. I've gotten a little more compliant, but I have my mother's strong-willedness.
Yes, you do. And you guys are just alike in a lot of ways. I was a very compliant child, but again, I think part of that was just the trauma that I experienced. And I was just trying to figure life out. I'm like, man, just let me get in this new house with these new parents and be quiet and observe and figure this thing out. But for you, Miss Strong-Willed, in that period of 3, I thought I was going to lose my mind. You would fight. You had foam. You had major. We would put you to bed, and then not 5 minutes later, man, we hear these little pitter-patter footprints coming down the hall. Yes, that do the sound again. Yep, here you came. And we were like, oh, not again. But you would fight me, literally, when I would put you to bed. And especially after I'd make you go back to bed, I would go in there with you. And you were belligerent. You would kick me a little bit. And as a Army Airborne Ranger, I'm like, oh no, little girl, this is not going to happen. But you would turn deliberately toward me and kick at me, and you landed some pretty good kicks to my chest sometimes. But again, I'm a 200-pound guy. You're a little, at that time, 25? I don't know, either 25-pound 3-year-old. But anyway, it was. And you threw a shoe at me one night. That was probably the worst.
Wasn't that coming home from a daycare event?
Yes, the daycare that you were in had they wanted to do something nice for the mom and dad, so they did mom and dad date night. And so we could drop off the kids that were attending that daycare. So we dropped you off, and they did movie night with you guys. And Mom and I went out to dinner. It was a great dinner. Came back and got you. But we came back too quick. You were not ready to leave. So you were not happy that we had showed up. But I guess you were in the middle of your movie. I don't know. But you weren't happy. And so we got you in the car, and we got about 5 minutes down the road, and you're mouthing off a little bit. And then all of a sudden, a shoe grazes. I'll never forget it. Grazes the right side of my face and my ear. And I'm like, oh, that is it. And I pulled the car over, and I didn't whip. And again, this is a parental choice. We did not use a lot of capital/corporal punishment, but you got your little hiney whipped on the side of the road that night. Do you remember? You don't even remember.
No, I remember the stories. I vaguely remember throwing a shoe at you, but I don't. Okay, here's the thing. Because I was so chaotic those years, they always said when I got older, we should have spanked you more as a child. And then they talk about this stuff, and I'm like, it sounds like y'all had to spank me a lot. I just think that's a little bit of a circular argument of it. We should have spanked you more. And then you tell these stories, and I'm like,
yeah. Well,
it was just my defiance.
Yes, and as a parent, you always struggle with what's the proper amount of punishment per se. You want it to be proportional to the offense. And then again, Paul was an extreme disciplinarian, and Paul used a belt. I never used a belt on you. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. But Paul used a belt on me 3 times. And what does that tell you? Number one, I'm a slow learner.
But number two, it was a very memorable experience. Not once, not twice, but three times. And the third time, I finally got it. You might ought to consider doing exactly what this guy tells you to do. But again, you were totally different. But the point in that those 3-year-old years, or when you were three, I had even read one. I don't remember what book it comes out of, but I think this is a great tip for parents to consider. It said, never use the same hand that you're going to discipline, that you're going to love with. Your hands should always demonstrate love toward your child. And so in those heated moments when you were kicking at me and I had to turn you over and put my hand on your little bottom forcefully, I always struggled with that because I wasn't looking for the nearest spoon. I'm in combat with this 3-year-old kid. And so it did hurt my heart because I never wanted you to view my hands as inconsistent. I wanted you to see my hands. Hey, my dad loves me. He's going to hug me. This is a safe place. And in those tense moments that we had during your third year, there were some times I had to put my hand on your bottom. So anyway, every parent goes through that and struggles with that. So other than the 3-year-old, let me say this, and then I want you to take over from here. Eva, thank you. You have never caused us one bit of problem. And we are so grateful for you, the lady you've become, the lady you're becoming, just the way you've conducted yourself, just who you are. And that's another lesson I learned from Paul. Paul used to thank me periodically and I was blown away. But as the years passed, I understood because I saw other challenges in families where parents and kids were constantly struggling. And it was combat. I just used the term combat. It was almost combat. We've never had that with you. You have been wonderful. We've had a fantastic life together.
Absolutely.
And I'm looking forward to the remainder of it as you continue to move into adulthood. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for who you are because it has been an absolute pleasure and will continue to be a pleasure to be your mom and dad.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot. I don't really ever know how to respond after these other than thank you because it's just their parenting that's made me want to obey them. So anyway.
Hey, let me say this, that because that's great. You never know what to say. And that always blesses my heart too because you're just, okay, what did you expect out of this dynamic that we have? You and I went to a camp a couple of summers ago, and I loved what they teach about the parent-child relationship, and it's the 4 C's. A parent starts off as a caretaker, then you move from caretaker to cop in these early teenage years. Now, in the phase that you and I and mom are in, you move from a cop to a coach. We're coaching you through your transition from the teenage years to adults. And then there's going to be another transition where we move from coach to consultant, where we really don't have any say at all. We've taught you everything we can, and we're going to be the consultants. And so we're on the doorstep of that transition from coach to consultant. But all that to say, I had never heard that before, and I thought it was fantastic. But it's been a great relationship between us.
For sure. My parents are my best friends, so I think they've done something right. Sorry, I'm like falling out of my chair. Okay. Yeah, if you hear me like get quieter, it's because I forget I have to sit close to the mic. But I want to go through, not so much of my story will be told through it, but I also want to go through like some of the things children go through when we're growing up and like how these activities and how I've gone through them, how I got past them, things like that. So if maybe your own kids or you're going through this right now, you can see how I got through it. It may not be the same situation, but at least it's some advice of what maybe not to do. But I have gone through so many different sports. I've done cheerleading, gymnastics, dance, volleyball. I did aerial silk for a time. I've like always hung out with the church, just different things like that. And recently I've moved into more of a focusing on my career, which surprisingly involves video games. That's such a cool thing that we can do a career in that. But I think that you're always dealing with getting along with others, fitting in and rejection, and just not even being the best athlete, like just grouping those all together. And so I wanted to talk about some of those situations. I'm going to start with not being the best athlete because that's the most fresh for me. I live in a city where volleyball is probably the biggest girls' sport. 80% of the girls are probably playing hoping to be D1, and then 20% are playing for recreation or just to stay in shape for the next school season and stuff. And I've gone through 2 teams here in Birmingham. One is absolutely fantastic. I adored them. I hated that I didn't make the team. There were like 12 seniors. They were only accepting like 12 people, and there were like 27 people trying out. So I understand that. But my other team, they loved to make fun of me. They often said things like, I like picking on you because I enjoy seeing your reaction and how it messes you up because then I get to yell at you more, which was really heartbreaking because it was destroying the love for the sport I had. But I think that it also helped in a way, learning not everybody is going to be your friend in life. And in volleyball, it's a team sport, right? You can't do your job without somebody else doing theirs. And I was a hitter. I'm 6 feet tall. And so I was always the last line. And so if the 2 first plays didn't go well, I was taking whatever was being given. But I often got yelled at for that. And I'm not the best player. I was playing for recreation. I wasn't playing to play in college. And so girls often yelled at me for that. And it was really heartbreaking. But I've learned from it now that you also have to be able to differentiate the people who are going to try and do it fast. And like the Chick-fil-A owners saying that you can do it fast alone or you can do it well with friends.
I'm not sure, but I like that.
I know that's not the right saying for it. It's something much more clever. But there's a lot of girls playing a team sport or in anything in life. There's a lot of people trying to do a team job quick and fast by themselves rather than realizing that you have to work as a team to do it well. And so they're moving ahead and then getting mad when everybody else is still back there trying to do it well and they're not doing their job either. They're just moving fast because they want to be ahead and they want to be the one getting the praise and things like that. And so I've realized that you have to be able to differentiate that and realize when you're in a situation where people want to work as a team and when people want to move at their own pace and some want to move faster, but then they want to berate you for not moving as fast as they are. And so you have to prepare your heart for that going into any situation. Maybe these people may not want to move at the pace I do or work at the pace or have the drive that I have. I may be working harder than they are, which you find a lot of times in high school science labs that you want to get the work done and everybody else doesn't. But it's just something you've learned. You have to prepare your heart for it going into it. And so I lost my love for volleyball. I do not play the sport anymore. It completely destroyed my faith in the sport. And it's all right. I still love the sport, but I could not continue to play it unless it was purely recreational. Just because I don't like constantly fighting with a team when we're supposed to work together. But moving on, unless you have something to say.
No, I was just going to say that's a great life lesson, and I appreciate what you just said, that, hey, I learned from it. And it was painful, Eva. It was painful for us as parents to realize that you weren't necessarily the most athletic. You weren't bad, but you did have some girls on the court that you knew that their parents are hoping and pushing them toward the D1 achievement. And I mentioned this book earlier. I'm in the process of reading it. I'm reading so many books, I can't even remember the title, but it's about achievement and that we've pushed kids in a lot of respects to achieve before they're ready, as opposed to, hey, let's just play the sport. Let's just let kids be kids. Yeah. And we've tried to do that with you specifically, is just let you be a kid and not push the developmental process so fast and at such a rapid pace. And I do want to make one quick point about what you said, because there's a life lesson. I had a mentor in the Army who I had a bunch of mentors in the Army, but during Desert Shield, Desert Storm, back in the first Gulf War, I was a battery commander, and we had an exceptional battery of men, and that's a battery is 120 plus men in a artillery battalion. But we won all of the competitions, and we were undefeated, and we were so proud of that. And I will never forget the battalion commander looked at me one night. And again, we had a close relationship, but he was a colonel. I was a captain at the time. And he just looked at me and he said, I need you to understand one thing. I don't need one great firing battery and a couple of average firing batteries. I need 3 good firing batteries, and you need to do everything you can to help the other two batteries be as good as what you think your battery is. And I never forgot that. I thought, hey, let's stop the hero mentality. And most things in life, they're a team sport. And I love what Ronald Reagan said. There's no limit to what we can accomplish together if we don't care who gets the credit. So let's just play together as a team. So I love the fact that you went through some painful experiences in athletics, but you learned the life lesson from it.
For sure. And I still love, and that's something I've always done too, is you can say the most hurtful things to me and I still love you. That's what we've been called to do. I may not want to be around you because I don't trust you, but that doesn't mean I don't love you any less. And so all of the girls who have said things like that, I still have the utmost respect for. And if somebody asks me about them, I'm going to tell you they're a fantastic player and they're great. But it's just my own personal conversations with them that have hurt me. But then moving on, not feeling like you fit in and rejection and getting along with others, I think go a little hand in hand. Not getting along with others. Okay, I had two classmates. I went to a very small elementary school. We were talking about this last night, and that's why I'm telling this story specifically. But there were 4 people in my class from K4 till 3rd grade. And then these 2 kids left and went to another school. Then I did 4th grade with one other person. So it was just 2 of us. Then I went to 5th grade, ended up in a class of 13, and guess who was there? Those 2 students that I'm about to talk about. It was so crazy but we had no idea that's where we were going to end up. And we've all talked about this since then. So it's not like I'm just sharing it for the first time now, but we could not stand each other. Fortunately, I don't know how to properly say that, but one of them is on the spectrum, which is all right. But I didn't understand that as a 2nd grader. And so I just knew, I don't know, I was a little antagonistic. I fully say that I was not the best 2nd grader. And so I would often and even they were twins. That's why I'm saying they, but I don't know. We always argued. And so when we argued, that started first. And so then I was like, how can I mess with them? And things like that. And so I would stare specifically at one spot on the wall that always made them think I was looking at them because they sat next to each other. It was the weirdest thing, but we didn't get along. It was my fault. I fully accept that. I was in the wrong. I have apologized profusely for it now, 10 years later. But
I am loving this. I love this conversation.
But that was the first time I experienced bullying, and I was the bully, and I fully repent for that. And I've had conversations with them. I sent them a 10-minute voice memo in November, and I was bawling my eyes out crying. I felt so guilty for it, and we talked about it. But anyway, it really, because I was on that side, I was able to understand now where the other people were coming from when they bullied me. And so when we got older and we were in different classes and these people were mean and stuff, I pretty much knew what their thought process was. And that's an awful way to learn how that works. But it was interesting because I always want people to like me. I'm a little bit of a people pleaser. I think that may just be because I'm Southern. I think we're all a little bit of a people pleaser, but I think that it hurts most when you're trying to have people like you and they continue to not want to like you. They continue to not want to be around you. They continue to hang out without you, make plans without you and different things. And when we all went on a trip in 6th grade, in my 6th grade class, they had to sit us down and tell us that there's such a big separation in the class. And if it doesn't get worked out, then we're going to lose some of our opportunities. Sorry, I just hit my mic. Some of our opportunities while we're in Virginia, because it was they were cramming 8, 9, 10 people into a table so they didn't have to sit with the other people. And that was really heartbreaking to go through. You're going through all of these changes. You're still not understanding what life is. You're going from being a kid to a teenager. And all of a sudden, half of your class doesn't want anything to do with you. And they're putting you in the bottom bedroom by yourself and things like that. It was just very heartbreaking because you tried your best to fit in. And then there's somebody who comes in who is ironically now my best friend, who has the exact same personality as you. And she is the one they choose to like, and they don't like you, even though we literally had almost all the same life experiences. It's crazy. But she's my best friend now, so I can say that. But it was just really heartbreaking because you're constantly trying to be liked and constantly trying to be their friend, and then they're constantly rejecting you. It's hard because then you don't want to do the thing the next day because you know they're not going to like you still. And so I hated going to school. It caused me to argue with my parents more because I was defiant still. I did not want to go to school, which I'm homeschooled now, so I don't have to deal with that. COVID hit. Some people think COVID, I rambled there, but I feel like it's all leading up to this, is COVID hit the end of my 7th grade year. And so I went from a class of 16 to doing school pretty much on my own every single day. And I loved it. I thought I was the biggest extrovert. I couldn't survive without people. I adored being virtual. And we were given the option to do it in 8th grade. And guess what? Me and one other person chose to do that. And I adored it. And then we were offered to move in 9th grade, or right before 9th grade. And we moved, and I followed my best friend to her homeschool. And it was literally the greatest decision we could have ever made, because I could not imagine sitting for 8 hours in a classroom with the same people every day. I go to school for 3 hours a day. And yet I'm getting all of my credits. I'm learning on my work. I'm doing all my work. It's just, I couldn't imagine going to a brick and mortar school anymore. But anyway, it's taught me how to have conversations with people that may not like me or that may not have as much in common, because I understand rejection. I understand that people are not always going to like you. I understand that you can try your best and you can do your best and you can try and educate yourself on what they like so that you can have conversation with them and they still not want to be your friend. And so going into the new school, I was very easily able to tell who wanted to be my friend and who was just being nice. And that was a big thing. There were a lot of people who were just nice and introducing you and getting you to know people in the school. And then there were people who actually wanted to be your friend and were checking up on you every day and things like that. And so it prepared my heart, knowing this rejection, understanding what bullying was from both sides of it, and understanding there's always going to be bullies in the world. You're always going to have somebody who doesn't like you, and how to get past that and deal with it and not let it tear you down, because you just have to pressure through it and understand that not everybody is. You can't be optimistic in situations like that because it's unrealistic. So
yeah, I think that you're making some great points. And again, I know you love homeschool. That does not work for everyone. Nothing against brick and mortar schools.
no, it just didn't work for me.
Yeah, it didn't work for you. And so we're so grateful that it turned out the way it did. Can I tell the story about what we were talking about earlier too? Because I think it fits in with what you're saying. We actually had been on vacation. And during that vacation, I read a book called The Age of Opportunity by a guy named David Tripp. And I truly believe God, if you will allow him, he puts resources, he puts people, he puts thoughts in your path at the specific time that you need them. And I really needed what was in that book. I had no idea why I was reading it. In all honesty, when I saw The Age of Opportunity, at first I thought it was a tech book. I thought it was just about all the different technological advances that are happening. And I thought, that looks cool. Then I picked it up, and it's a book on parenting. And I'm like, what in the world? And I thought, let's go ahead and read the book. That book helped me so much in dealing with what happened next. And how old were you?
I was probably about 7.
You were about 7?
7, so 2nd grade, 3rd grade age.
Exactly. And you're going through all the tension that you're talking about. I walked in your bedroom one night and I thought you were already in bed. The lights were out and I was just going to come kiss you goodnight, pray over you like we always did. And you're on the other side of the bed in the floor sobbing. It freaked me out because I'd never seen you do that before. And my initial inclination, this is the difference sometimes between men and women. My initial inclination, Eva, get up out of the floor and get in the bed. I was that close. And I was like, no. What did the book just tell you? And the book told me, if you're a dad dealing with a daughter, sometimes there are going to be emotional things that you're never going to understand. Don't try to understand them, but don't discount them, and don't just think it's her emotions, it's estrogen, she's just overly emotional. Do not do that. Whatever they're dealing with, you better take it serious because it's serious to them. I had just read that in the book. So I'm like, hey, follow the book. So I actually laid down in your bed and I just put my hands behind my head and I thought, okay, just calm down, Dad, and let's find out why she's crying and let's talk this out. And I said, hey, what's up? And you said, Dad, yeah, it was sweet. You said, Daddy, have you ever felt unwanted. And I can't remember the precise word that you used. I think that was it, though.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt left out? I think that was it, maybe.
It's probably in my second grade vocabulary.
Yeah, neither one of us remembered the word, but it pierced my heart because I knew in that moment you were experiencing all of the things that you just described, whether it was rejection, whether it was the tension of relationships, whether it was unwanted, whether it was being uninvited and left out.
Yeah.
You were feeling all of that in the moment, and therefore I felt it. And I said, sweetie, I said, probably, but maybe in a different way. And then we just began to talk it out. And then you eventually got up out of the floor and you crawled up in bed next to me. And then we just continued to talk. And I prayed over you. And then that was it. And we went on to another day. But you have learned some tremendous lessons,
Yeah.
Eva, because as you're talking, I was smiling to myself thinking, yeah, adults, we still go through the same thing as adults. Hey, I don't like this person. I don't vibe with this
Yeah.
person. There's tension. Hey, we're called upon to love everyone. And here's something I found out. A lot of times people, whatever they're going through, they're hurt, they're wounded, maybe they feel rejected, maybe they feel left out, and it's on us to figure out how we can reconcile the conversation, the relationship in the moment, and let's not be so judgmental ourselves when we're dealing with people, and let's give them some grace because we
Absolutely.
need the same thing, right?
Absolutely. And it's the golden rule. You would hope to be treated the same way as you treat others. And so if you're going through a situation where you're struggling right now and you're dealing with some hurt and you're lashing out, you would hope they would extend the same amount of grace to you that you would extend to them in that same situation. And so if you continue to treat people negatively when they're acting out and lashing out and they're struggling, and then you do the same thing and expect a different result, I mean, that's not treating people. They're treating you the way you treated them. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And as you were finishing, I was just thinking about something that actually a car salesman, when I bought the truck that I currently drive, I was talking to a guy and he found out I was a pastor. And so that generated some additional conversation. And he was telling me about a friend of his that was not a Christian, but he liked to study religions. And so he had read the New Testament. And so this salesman that was telling me the story, he said, what's your assessment being a non-Christian and you just read the New Testament for the very first time? What is your assessment of the New Testament? And this non-believer said, it's very simple. Be nice to people. And I've never forgotten that. I was like, wow, what an accurate assessment.
Yeah.
Now, there's more to it than
For
that,
sure,
obviously.
for sure.
When we start talking about the gospel and what Jesus did for us, there's a lot more to it. But in essence,
yeah,
hey, let's be nice to people and let's treat them as we want to be treated.
absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, great episode. Thanks for sharing your story today. I thought it was awesome. And we'll probably even get into some more of that as we
absolutely.
go along. But again, hey, I'm so proud of you, Eva, who you're becoming, just the way that you've approached your schoolwork, the way you've approached work in terms of being a nanny, which is one of your
Yes.
primary income. And you bake also, that we haven't even talked
No,
about that.
I don't do that as much anymore, but I did. Everybody used to tell me to go on cooking shows. And I was like, just because I am a 10-year-old, 11-year-old that likes to cook does not mean I'm going to go on Kids Baking Championship. I'm like, I cry when someone yells at me. I'm not going to do that. But no, I haven't baked in a while. I cook dinner every night though. So
You do, and you are amazing. Your mother and I are so grateful. I don't know how many, that's another episode.
Absolutely.
How did we convince you to cook dinner every night?
it didn't take any convincing. It took me being tired of there being no groceries in the fridge. Yeah,
Okay, that's another
that
story,
is.
but hey, we live busy lives
Yes.
around here. We have come to a agreement between you, your mother, and I in terms of the household chores. And oh yeah, by the way, if you haven't noticed, this has nothing to do with this episode,
No,
by
it's
the
just
way.
a story.
But yeah, it's just a story. But if you haven't noticed, because you did pick up the primary cooking responsibility, who's been taking out the trash every
You
week?
have.
Yes, and I know you hated that with a
did.
passion.
I
and
despised
so I
that.
gladly picked that up as a trade-off.
Thank you.
And so you are
Yes.
more than welcome. So anyway, it's been a fun episode. and looking forward to the next one. And just remember, let's always be able to talk from generation to generation.
Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow us wherever you listen to your podcast so you never miss an episode. And make sure to follow us on Instagram at G2G_podcast and on Facebook at Generation to Generation.